Hey there, Sooners Nation. Got some great news out of the transfer portal from the weekend. We had a big day for Mark Andrews on Sunday. We have a running back that could be going to the NFL, might decide to stay. Still remains to be seen. We'll talk about his pro prospects. And we got some recruiting updates as well. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Sooners Nation. Welcome to the Locked On Sooners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners and on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcast. You can also read my work covering the Oklahoma Sooners over at the Sooners Wire. And we got a lot of really great stuff to talk about on today's show, a lot of things to touch on. But first and foremost, we got to talk about Theo Wease after I tell you about who is sponsoring this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. Theo Wease is returning to the Oklahoma Sooners. It came out late or in the afternoon on Friday that he was withdrawing his name from the transfer portal and would be returning to the Sooners for the 2022 season. And I think that's really great news for Oklahoma. They lose Jaden Hazelwood to the portal. They lose Austin Stogner to the portal. It was expected that Spencer Rattler would go to the portal as well. And so between Hazelwood and Stogner, you're losing two of your most kind of experienced and important wide receivers or pass catching targets in the Oklahoma passing game. Now you still got Marvin Mims, you got Mario Williams, you got Jaleel Farouk, you got Cody Jackson, you got Trayvon West, you got a lot of really good players still in your wide receiver arsenal. But adding a guy like Theo Wease, I think, or bringing a guy back like Theo Wease, I think is really important for this team. It's important to have depth. As we saw in the 2021 season, they had a lot of injury attrition. Michael Woods was out. Mario Williams was out at times. These guys got banged up throughout the season. And it's important to have that depth so you can have a guy come off the bench and be able to play significant snaps for you, and you're not losing anything. With a guy like Theo Wease, you're getting a really, really good outside receiver, somebody who can be a possession receiver, much like what Jaden Hazelwood's role was for the Oklahoma Sooners this season. That's really what Theo Wease was in 2020. Now, he did average 14 yards per reception in 2020. He was second, or he's tied for first on the team in receptions and first down receptions with Marvin Mims. And I think that's really important to note because a lot of some of this team's struggles were related to guys just not being able to make some plays after the catch. They weren't necessarily able to get open. They weren't making plays at the sticks, to get first downs. And they just, at times it looked kind of inconsistent and looked disjointed. And I don't know if that was just chemistry, that was lack of experience, because you're relying on a lot of younger guys to make plays for you. And this was a team that just never had offensive consistency. And so bringing a guy that's got a lot of experience back like Theo Wease, it's going to take a lot of the pressure off of a guy like Marvin Mims. It's going to take the pressure off of Mario Williams or Cody Jackson to have to be the guy going forward. Now we know that Marvin Mims is the most explosive player on the team. He's the guy that has led the team in yards yards per reception. He's averaging more than 17 yards per reception for his career. And so you want to continue to feed him the ball down the field, but you got to have threats underneath that are going to make the defense respect them. And I think Theo Wease brought that in 2020. And that's why Marvin Mims, who granted was a little bit of a relative unknown as a true freshman, it didn't take long for people to figure out that Marvin Mims was going to be a player, but you had to have players that can make plays underneath in the passing game to threaten the defense and make them respect the short to intermediate part of the field. And Theo Wease did that. His ability to make plays after the catch, if you look back to the Bedlam game in 2020, I mean, he caught a short pass along the sideline and was able to make several guys miss for the touchdown. That's what Oklahoma needs. They need guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands after the catch in the short area of the field. I feel like they got away from using Mario Williams in that aspect because early in the season, against Tulane, Western Kentucky, Nebraska, they were using him a lot in the short to intermediate part of the field on bubble screens, getting the ball in his hands and letting him make a play. in the latter half of the season, I felt like they got away from that a little bit, where they didn't really make the defense make a play. And as you saw with Oklahoma at times, like tackling is not necessarily a consistent thing at the NCAA level. It's not consistent at the NFL level either. And so sometimes you just want to get the ball into your playmaker's hands and let him make a play. So getting Theo Wease back, I think that's going to be huge for hopefully Caleb Williams. It would seem, now you can't necessarily judge one player's decision as as breaking that another player is going to stay, but one would assume that if Theo Wease is staying, that he's got confidence that a certain quarterback is going to be staying, that Caleb Williams is going to be staying. And we've talked about it on the show several times. We talked about it with Parker a couple weeks ago, and we talked about it last week as well, that there's a lot of signs pointing to Caleb Williams returning to the Oklahoma Sooners. Yes, he didn't come to Oklahoma to play for Oklahoma. He came to play for Lincoln Riley. All that's true. And yet, people change. We see it all the time. If you watch college football at all, you can see that people change their way of thinking all the time, whether it's a recruit decommitting from one school to commit to another, whether it's a coach up and leaving one school to go to another for another opportunity. We see people change their thought processes all the time. And so Caleb Williams could very well stay, just because he likes the vibe in Norman, because he likes Jeff Lebby, because he likes Brent Venables, he likes his teammates. I mean, he's got relationships that go beyond Lincoln Riley at this point. If it was one of those, like we see, Malachi Nelson, the 2023 recruit, he doesn't have any relationships in Norman that would have tied him here. And so, of course, he's going to go. If this was a year ago and Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma for USC a year ago, then yeah, Caleb Williams is most definitely going. He doesn't have any reason to keep him in Norman. But Caleb Williams also helped recruit a lot of guys to come to Norman. Let's not forget the Sooner Summit that he put on last August when his high school season got canceled. And so he and his family organized an event to bring, Sooners commits and recruits from around the country to Norman to just hang out. Caleb Williams did that. So he's just going to up and leave all the guys that he helped kind of recruit. I don't know. But anyway, Theo Wease is coming back. That's good news for them. I'm looking forward to seeing him back on the field. I was hoping we were going to get to see him this season. Maybe we'll see him in the Alamo Bowl. I don't know. He looked like he was getting ready to play towards the end of the season, but they held him out. He warmed up once or twice with the team in pregame warmups, but never saw any significant action on the field. And so, yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but hopefully we'll get to see him in the Alamo Bowl. I think, he'll be a welcome presence for the Oklahoma Sooners in the receiving core. Obviously, with Jaden Hazelwood gone, you got some snaps that you can fill with a guy like Theo Wease if you want to get him that action. If you just want to let him rest and continue to just get stronger and get ready for the 2022 season, that'd be understandable as well. But coming up next, let's talk about Kennedy Brooks. He had some things to say in his media session on Friday, where he talked about what his thought process is on staying with the Alamo Bowl, going to the NFL. We'll also touch on some recruiting nuggets, and I want to talk about Mark Andrews' big day as well, and how in the world the NFL let him drop to the third round. But first, I want to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. It's a leader in college sports daily fantasy, offering more college football and basketball props than anyone in the world. They offer all the star players of the Power 5 as well as mid-major players you might not have ever even heard of. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of. In basketball, you can play points, rebounds, assists, threes made, and more. In the NFL, you can play yardage, touchdowns, and even interceptions if you like to go that route. All of our users, or all of you guys, can receive a 100% deposit match by using our promo code LOCKEDON, a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 by using our promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, daily fantasy made easy. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out the college football playoff preview here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's the ultimate college football playoff preview 2021. We got local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview began last Friday, so you can check it out. Find it on your podcast feed. wherever you listen to your podcasts. But let's talk about Kennedy Brooks. Kennedy Brooks spoke to the media on Friday, I believe, and basically said, he's waiting to make any kind of decision or declaration for his future until after the Alamo Bowl. It was always his intention to play in the Alamo Bowl. He just believed that you start something, you finish it, and kind of cited his absence from the team in 2020 as a big reason why he wanted to play. He's like, I missed so much football last year. I missed playing football last year. I'm not going to miss out on another opportunity to play football. Now, he looks like a guy that's got pro prospects. Whether he'd be a premium pick, excuse me, ate some pizza today, and it's really gotten to me. Whether he'd be a premium pick in the NFL draft, a top 100 pick, it's probably unlikely that he would be, but I think he's definitely a guy that goes within the first 5 rounds in the NFL draft. Running back has been devalued so much in the NFL that unless you're like a Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker at Michigan State, it's unlikely that you're going to be selected in the first 2 rounds or so. But Kennedy Brooks is a guy that is going to be very, very useful at the NFL level whenever he decides to go to the NFL. Now, if he decided to come back to Oklahoma, there's a big opportunity for him because there's still a lot of open snaps available. Yes, you have Eric Gray. You've got Gavin Sawchuk coming in 2022. You got Marcus Major, that would make a pretty great running back room if Kennedy Brooks decided to stay. However, the mileage on running backs only goes so long. Running backs are not Toyotas. Like a Toyota, it'll run forever, right? If you take good care of it, it'll run forever. Running backs, they're short. They run for a very limited amount of time. The NFL data supports that about age 27, these running backs just start to break down. And it's just the wear and tear from all of the carries they took in high school, college, the NFL. It's like, pitchers' arms. They can only take so much before they start to break down. The same goes for running backs. Now, there are some, like Adrian Peterson, who seems to defy any of that data, that logic. There's also, Frank Gore out there. I mean, there's players that can definitely be the exception to the rule. But you look at the data, and the data suggests that 27, you're starting to kind of fall off a cliff in your production. So Kennedy Brooks, he's already kind of a bit of an older back, even though he's just a junior. He's got eligibility. If he wants to play, I think obviously he's a great asset to have. I just have a hard time seeing him come back for another year when he's already had 3,000-yard seasons for the Oklahoma Sooners. I mean, he's put up a lot of really, really good tape, and he's going to get an opportunity to play in the NFL, and he'll get drafted. It's just a matter of where, because a lot of it's just going to depend on how well he tests. What's his athletic profile going to be? Because we know that he's got great vision, which translates to the NFL. We know he's got good elusiveness, which translates to the NFL, good balance. And he's able to read holes and find the holes and hit them hard, which is going to translate to the NFL. Everything he does well translates. It's just a matter of, is he going to test well enough in the speed, the agility, the strength stuff that does matter to NFL scouts and general managers. How well will he test in those things? But as a Kennedy Brooks fan, like, that's one of my favorite players of the last decade. I love watching Kennedy Brooks run. If you listen to this show at all for the last year and a half that I've been hosting it, then you know my affinity for Kennedy Brooks. You know how much I love that dude, and I would love to see him back for another year wearing the crimson and cream for the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's talk some recruiting. Man, we got some great recruiting news. There's been a lot of whispers out there about a potential news on maybe a guy like Jaren Kanak. We don't know anything just yet, but a lot of recruits were really excited. If you follow them on social media today, they were just being silly, but they were definitely acting like some big news is coming down. But some interesting news is our guy Parker Thune from OU Insider 247 Sports. He's a recruiting analyst over there. He submitted some crystal ball projections on Ahmad Moten, who we talked about a few weeks back. He was one of the early offers by Brent Venables and his defensive staff. He's a defensive tackle out of Florida. He's like 290, 6'3". Dude's just a load. Now he's a little bit different than Alton Tarber, who is probably more of your one technique, your nose tackle type. Moten is probably your, more of a three technique type. But what this signifies is that they're going to be stout in the middle. Brent Venables wants a stout defensive tackle group, and he is not getting shy about showing that. Moten over at 247 Sports right now only has a 3 stars, but I think he got his 4th star today. So, and has plans to release his top 5 later this week, which Oklahoma is probably most assured to be on, but probably won't sign later. He's got official visits coming in January. Oklahoma he'll visit later in January. So that's big news. I'm excited to see if Brent Venables can close the deal on that one. I would love to see him and Tarber line up next to each other one day in Oklahoma or for Oklahoma, and just daring teams to try and run on him. That just sounds like a lot of fun. We're gonna have those big dudes, and it's gonna be stout. And then Parker also submitted a crystal ball on our Mason Thomas, the edge defender, who's a teammate of Moten's out in Florida. This guy also a 3-star, but he's a track athlete too. He's like 6'2", 220, a bit of a lighter edge rusher, but a guy that's got a lot of speed and a guy that's going to be able to get off the edge quick. He runs the 100, 200, 400 for his track team, which to me is pretty impressive if you're an edge defender and you're able to run that fast. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. I hope that they're able to add him. If they're able to add him and Jaron Kanak, you add 2 track athletes with that kind of speed, that's going to be ridiculous. It's going to make Grinch's speed D look slow. So I'm looking forward to seeing that play out. And then I just wanted to touch on some really interesting thing. I put together a piece over at the Sooners Wire that you can check out of Oklahoma's just ability to recruit in the state of Oklahoma. And this year in the 2022 recruiting cycle, they hit on 4 of the top 10 prospects in Oklahoma. Those being Gentry Williams, Jacob Sexton, Robert Spears Jennings, and Jaden Rowe. Now, they had an opportunity at adding a 5th in Talon Shetron, but he flipped his commitment to Oklahoma State last summer. What I found interesting in this is that these are the most in-state Oklahoma recruits that they've landed since 2018, when they also landed 4. Back in 2017, they landed 5. 2016, 1. So, of the last 12 recruiting classes, they've added 4 or more in-state guys 7 times. They average about 3 in-state prospects per year. And I think it's important to note, like, if you're Oklahoma, you got to be getting a lot of these top guys in your state. Now, kids may just not want to come here. They may want to go play somewhere else, which is, fair. The student athletes are going to have a lot of reasons why they make the decision that they make. But landing the top players in your state shows that you're the power in your state. Oklahoma State also landed 4 of the top 10 recruits from Oklahoma this year, Talon Shetron being one of them. But it's going to show that Oklahoma State is catching up, at least in the state. And they've done a good job recruiting Oklahoma. And that's why it's part of the reason why their defense is so good, is they're getting these Oklahoma kids that are just really good players. And a lot of not just the defense, but the offense as well. You got Brennan Presley, the punt returner, the kick returner. He's an Oklahoma kid. There's a good chance they could land Casey Thompson, who's the Texas quarterback in the transfer portal. So, and is from Oklahoma. And that's where Oklahoma needs to start winning more of these recruiting battles. They got to start beating Oklahoma State more often than not. They've got to get in there and land the top prospects. And, they did get the top prospect, Gentry Williams. He's the number 1 Oklahoma recruit or prospect. But, they had Talon Shetron, but they lost him. Chris McClellan, the number 3 prospect in Oklahoma, he's going to Florida. Maurian Horn The number 4 is going to Texas Tech. And then you got Sexton. You got Robert Spears Jennings, both going to Oklahoma. And then C.J. Brown's going to Oklahoma State. Braylon Presley, Brennan Presley's little brother, is going to be going to Oklahoma State. The Sooners got Jaden Rowe. And then Deshaun Brown, he's an edge out of Choctaw. He's going to Oklahoma State as well. So, it's a they're hitting 50-50. They're beating Oklahoma State on some of these. They're 4 versus 4. So, but what I'd like to see is that as Oklahoma continues to build their program under Brent Venables, that they start winning more of these, because these are good. These are talented players. They're really, really good kids, and you got to win your in-state prospects. But coming up next, let's talk about Mark Andrews' big historic day for the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL. But first, let me talk to you about BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues its march to the playoffs. My Dallas Cowboys won today. They're now the 2 seed in the NFC, making their march to the playoffs as well. BetOnline remains your number 1 spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. And it's the holiday season. Grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar, Built Bar. Filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat. Hey, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There's so many flavors to choose from. You'll have a hard time making your decision. Will you have raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream, or peanut butter brownie? Or will you go for that coconut brownie chunk? Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. You don't got your Christmas shopping done yet? You got to get to the mall, got to get to Walmart, got to get to the store. Well, make sure you take a Built Bar with you. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order over at built.com, and that's 15% off at built.com. Mark Andrews had himself a day today. He became the first Baltimore Ravens tight end to surpass 1,000 yards receiving in its history. Now, Baltimore's only been around for a couple decades at this point, but that's still a pretty incredible feat for Mark Andrews. Now, I mean, it's not an incredible feat for Mark Andrews, but it's pretty incredible that it took this long for a tight end to get past 1,000 yards for the Ravens. Which brings me back to what was one of the more incredible scenarios that played out when Mark Andrews was drafted. He went in the 3rd round. And for the life of me, I still don't understand how a guy of his talent and caliber could go in the 3rd round. It's much like what happened with Creed Humphrey this last year, where he goes in the back of the 2nd. But Mark Andrews, not only was he drafted in the 3rd round, he was the 2nd tight end that Baltimore took in that draft. They drafted Hayden Hurst in the 1st, and then came back and took Mark Andrews in the 3rd. And just, again, flabbergasted by the idea that someone who was as productive as Mark Andrews was, and as athletic and as sure-handed, just had all the tools, the ability to win downfield, the ability to get open, that he would last as long as he lasted. And some of that goes back to just the lack of respect that the Big 12 gets, which is part of the reason that Oklahoma is looking to move to the SEC, is not only will they get their players get more respect because they're playing against higher level competition. If you look at players drafted by conference over the last decade or so, the SEC just wipes the table with everybody. And so the Big 12 or Oklahoma looking to kind of raise the profile for their players, getting into the SEC is going to help them. So a guy like Mark Andrews, who has incredible seasons, may not fly under the radar as much and does go in the 1st round, the 2nd round. But he had a huge day. He had 10 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Baltimore nearly beat the Green Bay Packers, even though Lamar Jackson was out. They almost beat the Green Bay Packers with Brett Hundley at quarterback. And I think this is what has me so excited about guys like Caden Helms and Jason Llewellyn, who are going to be coming to Oklahoma. I think it's going to provide some really, really fun opportunities for them to maybe make their tight end name for themselves, maybe make a big splash like Mark Andrews did. Because that dude was great, and he's now like the standard for tight end play at Oklahoma. I mean, the current standard. You got Jermaine Finley, who was fantastic. You got Jackson. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Oh my gosh. That's going to really bother me. It's late at night here as I'm recording this show, and I'm going to find it because I'm not going to be able to bother. Keith Jackson, my God, I'm sorry. That's terrible. You can tell I'm a younger Sooners fan, but yeah, like Keith Jackson, Jermaine Gresham, Mark Andrews, like could Caden Helms and Jason Llewellyn be the next one of those guys? The next guy that has big seasons for the Oklahoma Sooners? I think they can. I think they've got the talent, they've got the athleticism to do that. Now, a lot of it's going to come down to quarterback play and scheming, but with a coach like Joe John Finley, a good offensive coordinator like Jeff Lebby, there's a good chance that these guys are going to be able to break out. But congrats to Mark Andrews becoming the first Baltimore Ravens tight end to reach 1,000 yards receiving. And that's pretty incredible considering they had Todd Heap, who was a really, really good tight end in his time for the Ravens, even though he had some injury issues at times. He played really, really well for them. And it's just fun to see the Sooners succeed, right? It's always fun to watch your guys succeed in the NFL. I'm not a Baltimore Ravens fan. If you know my history, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. So thrilled that I've got CeeDee Lamb to root for every Sunday. But I love also watching the Sooners succeed, whether it's Kyler Murray or Baker. Of course, coming up in a couple weeks, I won't be so excited if Kyler Murray is succeeding against my Cowboys. But yeah, it's just fun to watch these guys in the NFL do their thing, put up big numbers. And if you're a fantasy owner of Mark Andrews, then you're definitely thrilled with his performance this week. But hey, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you to those of you who are helping us reach our goal, or my goal, of 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the year. We are about 43 subscribers away from reaching that goal. So make sure you go to YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and also hit the notification bell to let you know when new videos are up. But until tomorrow, my name is John Williams. Boomer Sooner.